Sometimes we have a hard time assessing how impactful our actions are, or how much they matter in the grand scheme of things. And today I wanted to talk about how, why, and where we place the control over our lives. So, is it with us, or is it perhaps with something or someone else? And to get to the bottom of this, I have 3 questions for you this evening. The first question is, how rational are we, really? So I was in this cafeteria once and I just picked up my coffee, a caramel latte like I always do. I went to the counter and I was trying to put a lid on the cup. I accidentally splashed a little bit on my shirt and immediately it froze. First thing that pops into my head is, everybody's thinking, what an idiot. And they have to be thinking about me, because otherwise, why else would they start laughing and whispering and talking as soon as I did that? Now, actually it wasn't quite like that though. Those people were laughing and whispering long before I even showed up. It's just that I only took notice after I made a mess out of myself. And I'm sure it's happened to you before as well. Whenever you do something slightly embarrassing, like tripping on a stair, immediately you feel like all eyes are on you. You're the center of attention. And this has been aptly named the spotlight effect. Now, as you would imagine, constantly sitting in the spotlight can be uncomfortable. So, how do we run from it? There's many ways of putting it. Some people call it the status quo. Some people call it social norms. I just like calling it going with the flow. Let me put it into perspective for you. Has your life up to now been dictated by you or by society? We often hear people going after a job because it's prestigious, it's a big company, it's something that everybody's going after, it's competitive. We tend to want things that other people want, or that other people will praise us for having. But if you take that competition and that prestige out of the picture, is that something you still want? Was that job an internal or an external desire? So if you take the norm out of the picture, what are you left with? You're probably going to be left with illusions and the knowledge you're not really in control. The knowledge that all this time you've been chasing something you never even wanted in the first place. You're left with this knowledge and this constant convincing of yourself, trying to constantly resolve the conflict between what other people want from you and what you want of yourself. And this concept of cognitive dissonance, as we call it in psychology, was first demonstrated in 1959 by 2 psychologists called Efstratiou and Smith. Now, what they did is they got people into a laboratory and asked them to complete a really, really boring set of tasks. Like, really boring. A 3-year-old could do it, literally. And after the tasks were completed, they asked people to rate how much they liked doing them. The twist is there were 2 groups of participants. One group was being paid $20 for their time. The other one was being paid $1. And you would think that being paid more, the $20 participants would rate the tasks better because people like money, right? I don't know about you, but not so much. But actually the exact opposite pattern was observed. The $1 participants rated the tasks more favorably. And the reason for that was because the $20 participants already knew why they were in that room. They were being paid for it. The $1 participants had to somehow justify wasting their time on this really pointless experiment. So they came up with an excuse for themselves. And the excuse they told themselves was, it was an interesting experiment. And it really wasn't, by the way. I need to stress that. It was boring. So we constantly go after things that other people want of us. And we make these same excuses in our everyday lives. That initial praise we get for doing something, the initial elevated sense of self-esteem, pushes us into decisions that aren't really our own. And when that praise fades out, what we're left with is us convincing ourselves this is what we wanted all along. And of course, following the status quo, following the norms is something we are okay with doing. The reason for that is that it affords us one huge advantage. That advantage being, it allows us to avoid accountability. It allows us to shift the blame and the adversities and the control to external factors rather than ourselves, because at the end, this was paved out for us. Now, in social psychology, we have this concept of a locus of control. People with an internal locus of control will take full responsibility for whatever happens to them, both their successes and their failures. But there's also people with an external locus of control. And these people will attribute good outcomes to things like luck, things like other people. But at the same time, they will blame everything and everyone for their personal failures, quite ironic, except for themselves. So, the question is really, how do we take that control and shift it back inside? How do we take it back from these external factors that we think govern our lives? Which leads into my second question for the evening. Why are we getting sadder and sadder while society is getting better and better? Now, we live in a society that has the absolute best standard of living we've ever seen, objectively. Famine, poverty rates, mortality rates, wars, they're all at an all-time low. But at the same time, depression is the #1 cause of disability worldwide. As Viktor Frankl put it, more than ever, people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. See, we're slowly losing control over our lives. The 20th century Greek philosopher called Ioannis Epictetus spoke about this concept of a heroic way of life. And according to him, the hero follows 2 core principles. The first principle is they're not concerned with the past or the present, but rather the future that they want to bring about. This means that the hero always has an overarching aim that they constantly and consistently work towards. The second principle is that they strive to break free from their own subjectivity. What does this mean? Well, the hero doesn't only recognize their biases, but they also actively fight and oppose them. They fight their biased beliefs, their biased excuses, everything else that subjectivity entails. So, you see, when we stick to social norms, when we stick to the status quo, that means that all we're doing is seeking that instant gratification of praise. So we're not concerned with the future, we're concerned with the present. And at the same time, we're convincing ourselves through our excuses that this is what we wanted all along. We're convincing ourselves we can't do better. So we're the exact opposite of heroes. We're not concerned with identifying our purpose. Instead, we look at life in stages. We identify the next stage, what comes immediately after. And only when we're at that stage do we begin asking ourselves what comes next. If anything even comes next. Some people just settle as soon as they reach that first stage. And of course, again, we're happy with that because sticking to the status quo means we avoid accountability, and we don't like that. This is a consistent finding in the psychology of risk perceptions. People dislike accountability. They dislike the spotlights. Take the bystander effect, for example. This is a phenomenon whereby if we're surrounded by other people, we tend to not step up to take action. We prevent ourselves from stepping up because the prevailing mentality is, why should it be me? Why can he, she, why can't you do it? Why should it be me? Why should I put my name on the line in case something goes wrong? But this is a very destructive way of thinking. This diffusion of responsibility is bad, and I'll show you why. In 2011, a 2-year-old child was run over by a van in the Guangdong province in China. 18 people saw her in her own pool of blood and walked around her. Some even raised their shoes so they wouldn't step in the pool of blood. Eventually, a second lorry passed over the child. It took over 6.5 minutes for a single woman to come to the child's attention. And how did she help? Simple act of calling an ambulance. Now, the child unfortunately succumbed to her injuries a week later in hospital. And this was not a one-off scenario either. It's happened before in the past, and it's been repeatedly demonstrated by social psychological research. Now, try to apply this to how we view the world and our own responsibilities. In the context of real-world problems, things like homelessness, things like mental health care, there's always a very select few questions that come up. What's the government doing about this? What is this institution doing about it? What is X, Y, and Z doing about this? But there's one question you will rarely ever hear. What am I doing about it? And this makes sense. Because in the context of world problems, there are now over 7 billion people that we can diffuse the responsibility to. So again, why should it be me? Why should I put the name on the line? Why? In case something goes wrong. Everybody comes after me then. So you see, being a hero isn't as important anymore. Being normal has taken over. And my theory for this is because we're asking ourselves the wrong questions all the time. We're cultivating this culture of the now. Where do I want to work? What do I want to become? Where do I see myself in 5 years? These are all questions for the short term. They're questions that a hero would not ask themselves. They don't carry our purpose. And it's funny because whenever we ask about an inanimate object's purpose, it's never a rhetorical question. So what's the purpose of an umbrella? Well, it's to protect us from the rain, right? Or the sun if you live in my country. It's really hot in there. What's the purpose of a toaster? It's in the name of the thing. It's to toast bread, right? What am I on about? And these things were built with a very specific purpose in mind. What's the purpose of a hammer? It's to hammer nails. What's the purpose of a nail? It's to keep planks of wood together. What's the purpose of a plank of wood? It's to build furniture. It's to build houses. So what's your purpose? I'm not fully quiet. What's your purpose? Why does this question become a rhetoric when it concerns people? Have you ever asked yourselves, what problem do I want to solve in the world? What do I want to be thinking the day before I die? Have you ever asked yourselves, what legacy will I leave behind? You see, imagine paddling on a raft in the ocean. Okay, there's really thick fog around you. Now you're just aimlessly navigating your way through this huge body of water. You don't know where you're going. And as soon as you get past the first layer of fog, what do you see in front of you? More fog. It's pointless. Now imagine that this fog is lifted, and you can clearly see land in the horizon. You know exactly where you're paddling towards. You don't need Johnny or Bob, who also on the raft telling you where to go. It's right there, man. That's the horizon. So you know exactly where you're going. And identifying your purpose, finding the ultimate goal is important because it doesn't only afford you clear guidance, but also the strength and the flexibility to fail repeatedly. If point A is the day you're born, and point B is that ultimate aim that you want to solve, then there is an infinite number of ways in which this path can be iterated, an infinite number of ways in which you can be a hero. And what's even better is that when you inevitably fail some of these pathways, you're left with all the rest and keep you going. This is just conceptual, by the way. You don't need to be an environmental scientist to follow this talk. It's just a good example, I guess. Now, you may be familiar with this picture. This is Albert Einstein's desk as he left it the day before he died. This is a man that worked tirelessly to the very end to answer the questions he set for himself. And he left humanity with some of his greatest scientific treasures on the way. Now, Einstein probably never knew he was not going to go back to that desk the next day. But he had clearly identified his purpose, and that was to advance our scientific understanding. Now I ask you, what if Einstein had stayed set on the present, and what if he had just made excuses to convince himself he couldn't do better? Little known fact about him, he was a Jewish professor in a German university during the rise of the Third Reich. There was a $5,000 bounty on his head when he fled Nazi Germany. In fact, his official government status was not yet hanged. No pressure. So what if Einstein had told himself when he was led to flee Nazi Germany, I'm just going to go to the Bahamas, chill out for a bit, let this all sit out, and make my appearance again 20 years later. How different would the world have been if Einstein had given up? I was really inspired by Einstein's story, and as soon as I started thinking about my purpose in life, I stopped being bored. I stopped considering work to be work, because every day for me is just another pebble on this mountain that will build up to be my ultimate aim. Now, my average day consists of reading, working, reading, and then going back and working some more. It's quite exhausting on average. And sometimes people come up to me and they ask me, why do you love your life so much if you just get exhausted day in, day out? And I always have one very simple answer for them. Because I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished working towards what I want to achieve. And in fact, I probably never will, which is precisely why I love my life so much. You see, finding your purpose gives you the willpower to take that control and relocate it back inside. It allows you to step into the spotlight and take accountability for the things that matter to you. And like a true hero, it allows you to take ownership over all your actions and everything that you ever do. So, my third and final question for you all this evening is this. Are you actually the hero in your life? And if you're not, how could you be one? Thank you very much.